Hi there, fellow sea glass lovers. Thanks so much for joining me today. I'm Jackie, and today I'm going to show you how to make a very small sea glass mosaic. Because if you've been watching me over the course of the winter, you would have seen me work on this very large piece. I did one lesson for every pane of glass. I gave you tons and tons of information of different techniques that you can use for doing sea glass mosaic art. And I'm sure that some of you may have enjoyed that, but I am sure that there were some of you that were just like, that's way too much information, Jackie. That's a way too big a piece. Can't do that. So today I'm going to show you a very manageable piece, not even necessarily a starter piece. I've been doing sea glass mosaics for a long time, and I'm really excited today about starting a very small piece. So I have a little 8x8 frame. I've done a little sketch of a sailboat in the moonlight. A fairly simple design, won't take very much sea glass. Won't take me very long to do. And I'll give you some very simple instructions on doing this. And I'm going to put a pattern for this one on my website as well. And I may have some kits for it. I may not, because I'm doing up some kits for a sea glass festival that I'm going to. And I don't know how long they're going to last. But anyway, I hope that you enjoy this one. So, what are you going to need for this project? You want to start with a frame that holds an 8" by 8" piece of glass, and you're going to need your pattern. So I have this drawing of a sailboat in the moonlight, and I'm going to put the drawing behind the glass, and then I'm just going to take the back from the frame and put it in place so that it holds my pattern in place. And there, I've got a pattern to follow while I complete my mosaic. Now for my glue, I like to use a kitchen and bath adhesive caulk. You want one that says clear on it. It either goes on clear and stays clear, or in the case of this one, this goes on white and then dries clear. Silicone adhesive caulk, quick seal, but any brand will do as long as it dries clear or goes on clear. Now, I'm also going to need, for my pattern, a piece of driftwood. I really like this one. It's kind of cool. And I need some pieces to create my inukshuk. So I've picked out some pieces of white pottery for a head, kind of the arms. You can use 2 pieces for the arms. In this case, I found one that I'm going to use, a few little legs, and I'm just going to set those in place. I'll glue them in a few minutes. I want a blue piece of sea glass to make a flag on top of my sailboat. I've got some brown sea glass for the sails, and I'm going to fill in the water brown because it's a moonlight scene. The water's going to be very dark, and I want some white sea glass for the moon. I've got a lot more sea glass here than I'm going to need, but I like to have lots to choose from. And then I've got some green sea glass to fill in the night sky in behind here. And other than that, all I need is, I like to use my little craft tweezers, and I've got a toothpick and a wooden barbecue skewer that I use to clean up some of the messy bits as I'm going. And then I have a piece of paper towel to clean off any messy bits of silicone. So to get started, for a project like this, I would first glue on the piece of driftwood. Now this takes quite a bit of adhesive caulk because it's a large piece. So I'm going to put some of that on the back. As you can see, this goes on white. After it sets, you can tell it's set once it has been totally clear. Now, one of the things I like about this is, if you've watched my videos before, you know how much I like this silicone, because I can play around with it. I don't have to leave something in place for a bit. It takes a while to set, and also because it doesn't smell. But the biggest thing about it is it holds. I have found with sea glass and glue, it might hold initially, but it doesn't hold in the long run. And I've got pieces of sea glass art that have been hanging in the window for years. And with this stuff, it doesn't turn yellow and it doesn't dry out and fall off. So I like that. So the first thing I'm going to do is glue on my driftwood. Then I'm going to glue my inukshuk into place. You don't have to put an inukshuk in your pieces. It's a bit of my signature. I put an inukshuk in pretty well all my pieces. In fact, you'd be hard-pressed to find a piece of my work that doesn't have an inukshuk in it. It's kind of my signature, I guess you could say. It also acts for me as a reminder that I was here, because when you pass through this life, you need to realize that you have an impact on your life, and what is the mark you want to leave behind you. And I'm also going to glue my flag in place. So, driftwood first, then some of your special pieces. If there are any other special pieces that you want to put in, now is the time to do it. And now it's going through the colors. So I'm going to set aside my green and my white, and I'm going to fill in brown. So I'm going to fill in my sails, and I'm going to just put a bunch of brown on here. Now with this filling in bit, you want to look for pieces of sea glass that fit along the lines in your pattern. So what I typically do is I will look for pieces that get these pointy edges. So like right along here, I'm going to look for a piece that has a bit of a 90-degree angle. And then I'm going to fill in pieces that follow along the line of my pattern. Sorry about my scratchy voice here today. It is spring, and in the spring all the trees come alive with pollen, and unfortunately I have allergies, and I will often lose my voice for a while in the spring. Once the pollen's in, I'm fine, or once the pollen time has passed. But it makes for a scratchy voice. So this is where you want to take your time and just slowly find the pieces of sea glass that are going to fit in. And I like to arrange my pieces so there's little spaces between them. So I'm going to play with brown sea glass here for a while and fill in the brown parts of my pattern. So this dark water and my two sails. And for each little piece, I'm going to take my adhesive caulk. I'll put, now where the small pieces, the big pieces need a lot of silicone, the small pieces need only a little. So that might be enough. And then I've got my stick here to clean up any bits that get on my glass. So a few points on my brown. I used some of the darker brown for the water because it contrasts nicely with the lighter brown in the sails. And you could do your sails in all small brown, but I find adding a few bigger browns just adds a bit of interest. You can also add different colors if you want. It's whatever you want. The sails can be a point of interest for your piece. And then I put a few browns here so that those are the supports, the masts, that go up that the sails run off. Now what I'm going to do is I've got my white sea glass. I've got a variety of shades of white here as well. And what I want to do here now is fill in the moon all with white sea glass. Now in the sails, it doesn't matter so much if you don't stick to the pattern because sails flutter in the wind. A moon is always round, and a full moon is very round. So what you want to do here is be very particular with your sea glass and make sure that you run your sea glass right along the line of your circle. And run it all the way down here to the driftwood. Fill everything in with white. And what I'm going to do in the center there is I'm going to stand some white pieces on end, and then that will make a little bit of a white background there between the two sails to separate the two sails. So I'm just going to glue some of those on end there in the middle. I have to get really tiny ones for that because I don't want it to stand out too much. So, time for the green sea glass. So I've got my tray of green sea glass, and I'm just going to work away, filling in the green all the way around the full moon. Now this is a very important step in this design because it's the dark around the light that really makes the full moon pop. And for me, this piece, it's not about the green sea glass, it's about the full moon. But you need to have the dark to really make your green or your full moon pop out. So if you don't have an overabundance of green sea glass, you don't have to use green for this. You could get some dark pebbles, you could you could even incorporate some brown in here. Basically what you're going for is the contrast. And it's the contrast between the light and the dark that's going to give you that full moon effect. I do have enough green sea glass for this, so I'm going to fill in my background with green. And I'm going to be very careful around the circle to make sure it really hugs that white rim of the full moon, just to further emphasize the roundness of the full moon. Now as I stand back and look at this piece, I'm thinking that the piece of driftwood could use a tiny bit of interest. It's a beautiful piece of driftwood, but I thought I'm going to take this little shell here and just attach it on top of the piece of driftwood, just to add a little bit of interest. So I think that finishes my piece off very nicely. So after all the caulking has set and dried clear, you know everything's going to stay in place if you flip it over. So you can flip your piece over, take off the backing, and then what I like to do to hold my piece inside the frame is to take the silicone and run a bead of silicone all the way around the outside. And then I let that set, and once it's set, this piece can be flipped over and it'll hold everything in place, and then I can hang it. So there you have my sailboat in the moonlight. It just takes me back to the beach and makes me feel like I'm sailing away on the water at nighttime. So thanks so much for joining me for this video. Be sure to join me for some upcoming videos I have. I love this moonlight theme, so I'm going to do a few more of these in this nice small size. So a manageable project. So until next time, I hope you make it out to the beach, and happy sea glass hunting.